By the way, you can always tell how successful a project is becoming by the amount of abuse that you receive on social media. And I have to say, we're getting plenty of it right now because people don't like the fact that we tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. They're always trying to pick holes in everything that we do. Bring it on, guys. It's great fun. We are the fastest growing radio station on the planet, and there's a very good reason for it because all of the other radio stations on the planet are not very good. And they don't tell you the truth either. Let's talk to Helen Dale and find out what she makes of it all. Helen, a very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
Very well indeed. Very well indeed. But I'm intrigued by your theory and what you're going to be saying today about the problems of having a data-driven government, because I think that is absolutely at the heart and soul of what's going wrong.
Well, it's not my theory, I have to confess, although I've discussed it a little bit in articles I've written, like the piece I wrote for CapX last week. But by way of background, what happened was I tweeted it positively about one of the vaccines that's showing great results, which is terrific. This is really good. I'm very pleased to see it. And it looks like we're going to have 3 good ones. And I've got a friend who actually works, a close friend who actually works in epidemiology and in virus development for the Commonwealth Serum Laboratories in Australia, which are working on the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. And one of the comments he made to me was that when you need to vaccinate so many people so quickly, it's better to have more than one, basically, just for pure logistical reasons.
Right.
So I just made a tweet to that effect. But I then did a follow-up tweet in a thread where I said, this shows that science works and the scientific method works, but all of the epidemiological, economic, and now polling forecasts, you know, that they don't work. And and I made a gag. I said, you might as well, talk to Mystic Meg.
Right.
And next thing, I had Nassim Nicholas Taleb in my mentions.
Right.
And he provided me with a paper that he co-wrote where he makes exactly the same point. Now, that doesn't mean to say he says you should do nothing in pandemics. That's not what he's arguing.
Right.
He's pointing out that and his papers, if you've got an A level with a statistics module, and you remember it, or you did first year statistics at university, you will understand it. But typical Taleb, he provides lots of other really fascinating history and background, and he's a very clear writer. Yeah. So he explains it in plain English. But the guts of his argument is that in complex systems with fat tails, so lots and lots of different possibilities, they're subject to what's known as the law of very large numbers, or law of large numbers, which means, and he actually doesn't name Mystic Meg, but you finish up with a situation where there is no way you can forecast the future.
Right.
And to pretend that
you don't actually need to have a degree in statistics to be able to say that.
No, you don't. But he said, but the thing is, it's this very strong impulse. And it's interesting, Neil Oliver also says this, but coming at it from an archaeologist's point of view in his book, Wisdom of the Ancients, where we've got this desire to tell the future, and we'll do the most ridiculous things to try to tell the future.
Yes.
But a few things fall out of Taleb's comments along the lines of lockdowns are what you do when quarantine fails, because they weren't done historically in ancient civilizations. They're a modern response to the fact that we can travel more easily. And it is certainly true, and that countries that are very effective at closing their borders, and Japan, Australia, and New Zealand fall into this category, are ones that they don't finish up either not needing lockdowns or not needing very, very serious ones. And often, in the case of Japan, not needing test and trace. Now, test and trace is a substitute for quarantine, but in order to make it work as effectively as closing the borders, you have to do what South Korea did and just completely blow up everyone's privacy rights.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, Helen, isn't it? I mean, all of these measures would be great if they worked, right? Now, test and trace in this country clearly hasn't worked because it hasn't been done very well. Similarly, the lockdowns in this country haven't really worked because they weren't really proper lockdowns. When you look at Australia, and whether you like it or not, they were able to sort of get the disease infection rate down to a very low number because they basically didn't let anybody do anything. You couldn't go out.
And they didn't let anybody into the country. I mean, I've had to have, as I've said, I've had to have conversations with my bank in Australia because I normally return to Australia once a year, either for a book tour if I've got a new book out. Like I went back in 2017 and 2018 for book 1 and book 2 of Kingdom of the Wicked, or just to see my family members. And I can't do that now. And I've had to have my Australian banking stuff all sent to me in the UK. They're not even letting us, and I'm a Australian citizen as much as I'm a UK citizen. I can't go back to Australia. I'm not allowed.
Right, and that would be the reason why the lockdown works. Whereas I'm not advocating that, but what I am saying is that if you have a lockdown which doesn't look like a lockdown, which is currently the one we have, which only appears to be doing one thing, and that is to punish the hospitality business because everybody else appears to be open.
It's
more
just
or less.
not working.
It's not going to work, is it?
No. But the point that Taleb makes about trying to forecast the future in complex systems with many moving parts, with very large numbers, with weird risks, is very compelling. And I just sat and read his paper, and I just thought, and it made me think, because I felt a little bit sorry for Dominic Cummings, the way he was fired out of a cannon, basically, at number 10.
That's a very small and exclusive club you're in there, Helen.
Yeah. And I sat there and I thought, though, but Cummings's big thing was data-driven government.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Cummings is a humanities graduate. Nassim Taleb is a statistician and an actuary and has been very successful in financial markets. So he's the real deal. He's actually put into practice what he's done and he's studied in his life, which is relatively unusual. He's like Keynes. Keynes was a very successful stockbroker. Yeah. And I just sort of sat there and thought, reading Taleb's paper, going, you actually can't do this. Data-driven government is not possible. No. So it's probably very good that Dominic Cummings has gone, because he was trying to set himself up as some sort of Mystic Meg figure.
Well, that's right. And listen, I'm all for collecting data. I don't think having data is a bad thing.
And nor does Taleb. Taleb is very clear on that.
Yeah, but extrapolating it is the problem. And once you start extrapolating, I mean, I did a little exercise here a couple of weeks back where I asked people to kind of predict things that might happen at the weekend. And people were doing things like, well, I'm eating a cheeseburger now. If I keep eating cheeseburgers from now until Monday, I will probably put on 25 stone. And I said, right, for example, if I drive for 24 hours, by the time the Sunday night comes around, I'll have driven all the way to Andorra, and you can say all sorts of things like that, but none of it means anything.
Well, yes, and it's just, it was a bit of a wake-up call for me because, I do believe in the importance of collecting information. I think the Office of National Statistics does do important work. It is important to know, for example, crime rates amongst different parts of the population, which the ONS collects, and things like the British Crime Survey has always done historically. And you need to know these things, otherwise you don't know how many police officers you need or where to put them or so on and so forth. But or how many prisons to build or how big the prison estate should be and that kind of thing. But the point is, these are much simpler things. There's only a few variables and you can control for them and you can test much more readily. You can still get it wrong, but it's much harder to get it wrong.
Yes.
It's when there's many
But what I object to, Helen, is the certainty with which we are told. For example, the most latest example is the 5 days for 1 day nonsense, where you say, well,
Taleb is...
Sorry, go on.
If Taleb is correct, then that is almost certainly nonsense. As in Mystic Meg levels of nonsense should be in the part of the newspaper where the astrology is.
Right, exactly right.
It's astrology for nerds.
Exactly right, but that's exactly what I think most sensible people are objecting to now, because they're just not buying it anymore. We've seen so many graphs and so many moving parts, and they've now started doing animated slides so that we can follow it, with our eyes. It still means absolutely nothing because it's a projection.
Yeah. And then, of course, when they got caught out by the Statistics Authority, and Boris claimed he was bounced into a lockdown, and he probably was. He was caught on the hop and the government was caught on the hop. You've still got the problem of you just don't, it's just so unreliable and difficult to sort of work around. But even now, the statistics authorities and people who understand statistics are starting to say, hang on, you need to stop with this. It's getting ridiculous and very uninformative and doesn't help anyone. Right. And then when it turns out to be wrong, and this is an important issue here, when it turns out to be wrong, because people who are making these claims are scientists, it brings science into disrepute. And the thing is, we're about to roll out 3 vaccines across the developed world and then the developing world. That's usually what happens. And the thing is, because people see science and scientists disgracing themselves in the misuse of information, or just using information in a way that it can't be used, because people want to tell the future and you can't tell the future. But the thing is, the vaccines have all been developed in the very traditional way, using the scientific method, where you come up with a hypothesis, you test against the hypothesis. If the hypothesis is knocked over, that idea is no good, and you move on to the next one.
And that
which is a totally different system. And that's what's giving fuel, this constant attempt to tell the future and getting it wrong. It gives fuel to anti-vaxxers. It gives fuel to people when it happened over Brexit with the economic forecasts and they were all wrong. It suggests that the entire discipline of economics is worthless. And that's not actually true. It's just a very narrow and specific part of the discipline where you've got people trying to do astrology for nerds.
But it's also people with huge brains misunderstanding not only the public feeling, but also the public persona and the perception. This is a great tweet I've got here, which sums it all up. Link says this: Mike, the problem with all these sage experts is they can tell you how many molecules there are in an orange, but they've got no idea how to peel it. I think that pretty much says it all, doesn't it?
Well, this is, you can get Taleb again. He talks about the phenomenon of the educated yet idiot, and that can fall into two categories. You get people who are absolutely brilliant in one narrow area, but are complete numpties outside of that area. Yeah. But you also get the other problem of people who have a very shallow understanding of a lot of things, but don't have any depth to their knowledge. Right. And that is a phenomenon produced by the PPE qualification at Oxford, which I think there are real problems with, where you get people who do a year of philosophy, a year of politics and a year of economics, and think that they've effectively got a philosophy degree, a politics degree, or an economics degree. Right. And that turns out to not be very helpful either, because your knowledge is very shallow.
It's like knowing how the combustion engine works and be able to explain it in great detail to anyone who comes along, but you don't have a driving license, so you can't actually take them anywhere.
Yes.
I mean, that seems to sum it up. It is, absolutely. Now, Helen, I'm terribly sorry, but we're short time this week, so I'm going to have to leave it there. And I know you wanted to say something about Jeremy Corbyn. Give us a quick 20 seconds on Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, the contrast between the internal machinations of Labour and the Conservative Party, which is an absolute monarchy tinged with moments of regicide, is really quite notable. That's all I'm going to say.
Absolutely right. Helen, thanks very much indeed. Helen Dale there giving us the lowdown on the problem of running the government based on data, particularly based on data projections and statistical theory. It just doesn't work. And you lose the public and you lose the public's confidence, and that's what's going on.